living a liberated life, really trusting that when you tune in, when you pause and you tune in and you follow something that is making you feel inspired or excited, without knowing the outcome, and you're trusting the process. If you are trusting the process, maybe what doesn't look like it's working is the greatest thing that ever happened.
Welcome to the Powerhouse. My name is Joshua Gonzalez, but you can call me JG. This show is for the moment before the win, when you're at the crossroads and your judgment actually matters. Each episode, I sit down with a leader here in New York City to unpack one real decision under pressure. What the stakes were, what the trade offs they faced, what they chose, and the values behind it. Then we publish a short written breakdown in the Powerhouse newsletter on LinkedIn. So the lesson is easy to share, easy to remember, and useful long after the recording. So if you ever had to make a hard call with imperfect information, this is for you. Let's get it started. Let's welcome our speaker today. She is a certified professional coach, freedom fighter, and storyteller who helps people escape their personal prisons and build lives that feel authentic, dignified, and free. Let's welcome Ivy Woolf Turk. Welcome, Ivy. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Very happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. It's an honor. I know we just spoke very recent and with a quick turnaround. I appreciate it so much and your willingness to kind of contribute to this project and make global level of leadership accessible to all. So right now it's a special event. For people who are listening, we have some live audience. These are emerging leaders from Asia, so with different backgrounds, and they are going to participate in our Q&A later. So if you are definitely watching, please read the newsletter, and maybe one day you could also be in one of our recordings and get a chance to interact with our leaders. So let's get this started. We'll start with the first question. So Ivy, tell us more about the context. Where were you in life before this big decision?
Oh, where was I? Well, I'll give you a very brief snapshot. I was a real estate developer in New York City. I co-founded this company over 20 years earlier with a partner and was about a week away from merging the company with a hedge fund because we knew that our business model was about to be threatened by the downturn in the real estate market. I'm going to make that part of where I was looking like the epitome of success, about to merge, about to be enabled to be worth many millions of dollars, and a knock on my door changed the trajectory of that life forever. Because behind that door, a week before this merger, were 21 FBI agents at gunpoint. And as they dragged me up the stairs, reading me my rights and chaining me to my toilet, they told me that I was being arrested for conspiracy to commit mail-in wire fraud. Had no idea what they were talking about. I was so frightened that I was speechless. And as they stuffed me into a squad car with my children, looking at me with their eyes like on slinkies, I thought, oh my God, women are to be seen and not heard. Like they don't know me. And this is not good. I'm going to fast forward so we can get to the real pivot. I fought this case for 2 years to no avail, and I was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. I lost everything I worked my whole life for, except for the remarkable love of my children and some very dear friends and family. And I spent 40 months in a federal prison with nowhere to look outside myself among 200 suffering strangers to define success. And therefore, I had to go within. In the 40th month, I received a letter from my sentencing judge saying that some of the investors who had gone to the government had sued one another and there had become information, and she was recommending that I be released because it was discovered that what I'd been imprisoned for was not actually the case. And I was released to a halfway house in the Bronx because I had lost my home, that I had raised my family in. And it felt in that first moment when they sent me out to get toiletries, toothpaste, and whatever, that I might have had felon written in neon on my forehead. Because in that first 3 hours, as I went to find a drugstore, I got mugged. And this was the pivotal moment where the decision that you asked me the question was made. I mean, I could spend hours explaining decisions that were made during my incarceration, but in this moment, laying on the ground with a dislocated shoulder, knowing I had no health insurance, I had no cell phone. And if I went back to the halfway house and told them what had happened, I would be sent back to prison because I had no medical insurance and they wouldn't allow me to be a problem. So someone from behind said, "Ma'am, can I help you?" After walking over me like I was an ant on the ground, some nice person lifted me, the shoulder popped back in. And in that moment, as I hobbled back to the halfway house, I made a decision that if I, a privileged, educated, formally successful human being, could not make it in her first 3 hours out in the world, what about the ladies I left behind? And that's when I decided that I needed a credential other than ex-felon, and that I was going to go back to school no matter what it took and get a credential that would enable me to really support women in figuring out how to move forward with the stigma of having taken care of everything and everyone else at the expense of themselves, and then coming home thinking they were a mistake instead of that they had just made one. So that was the moment. Dislocated shoulder, laying on the ground with a, purse ripped off of me, with the only money I had in the world, and afraid to tell them for fear they'd send me back. And of course, didn't want to worry my children. So
Wow, that was an intense, narration of your, history. Appreciate it. And yeah, so what were the decisions in front of you?
well, the decisions in front of me were, how am I going to get out of this halfway house? Where am I going to live? Even though I managed thousands of rental apartments, nobody was willing to give me a lease. Nobody was willing to give me a job. I was either overqualified, or underqualified. They were telling me the only thing I could do was work in McDonald's, and McDonald's laughed at me. And so I started reaching out to everyone I knew. And I ended up cleaning other people's houses, driving a taxi, working in a furniture showroom, and cooking for a friend's sister who had just had a knee replacement, and assisting her in getting to doctors, etc. So I cobbled together money just to survive, because they don't really support you. I mean, the punishment sort of never ends in the American injustice system, and you have to pay 25% of anything you earn for your keep, for your room and board. Okay. So my goal was to get out of the halfway house and to find a way to go to coaching school. And then a miracle happened. All my children and my ex-husband came together, and they enabled me to move into the apartment that my youngest daughter had lived in while going to school in Manhattan. And she was going to move in with a friend. And they gave me enough to get through 6 months of rent plus my meager earnings, and tried to apply and get into a school. And in that first night in that apartment with my puppy, a mattress, and a stick lamp, and a computer that I did not know how to use. I was, at this point, I was 58 years old. I had always, I mean, this is embarrassing to admit, but I had a secretary. I really didn't know how to use a MacBook Air. And I was sitting there with this, I'd had a BlackBerry, and I had this old iPhone 4 that my son donated to me, and this old MacBook Air, and a stick lamp, and a dog, and an air mattress. And it was like, okay, you have to learn how to do this. And I found the way to Google. I mean, I know this sounds crazy because now I run Go High Level and I have a full business. And, 12 years later, I wouldn't say I'm a techie, per se, but I certainly have come a long way from that night. And I found that there was a free seminar from the one coaching school that I really wanted to go to in New York. There were others that were one was when in India that there were others, but this was like the top. This was the Harvard, the Princeton, of coaching schools. So I figured out a way to get on the free seminar, and at the end they asked if there was anybody who had a question, and I very bravely and courageously pressed one, and the gentleman asked what was my question, and I asked, do you offer any scholarships? And he said, well, what is your situation? And I took a deep breath and I said, well, I've recently come out of prison and there's nothing I want to do more than be a coach. And he said, well, interesting that you should say that because my partner, who co-teaches next year's course load with me, is very interested in bringing coaching to prison. And so I think you should speak with her. And this was what I'll call the beginning. And this is a very important message for all leaders or all people who want to figure out what's next. It's you really have to trust A, divine timing, and B, the universe, that when something is for you, it happens. And so the next day, a call was scheduled with this woman, this coach, and what was supposed to be a 15-minute interview turned into a 2.5-hour love fest. And she said that she was going to see what she could do. 2 days later, I was offered a partial scholarship. And with my meager earnings and the willingness to do whatever it took to be in this cohort of 28 people, I was accepted. And that was in November of 2013. A year later, in November of 2014, I graduated and became a certified professional coach.
What made this decision risky or hard? What was
Oh my
at
God.
play?
Oh my God. I mean, first of all, every dime I had was going toward my education and my survival. It wasn't really living, it was surviving. And somehow, coming from a life that I had created of privilege, I mean, I was born into privilege to a certain extent, and I had created uber privilege. There was there there was a tremendous reevaluation of what's valuable and what's important. And quite frankly, the most important thing, despite all of my endeavors, had nothing to do with financial success. It had to do with returning as the matriarch with a dining room table, enough to fit my children and their significant others, and hopefully someday my grandchildren, who I now have. So there was a lot of disappointments, people I thought were my friends. Well, they were my friends in the good times, but they weren't really my friends in the bad times. Then there were people that came from the universe that supported me and lifted me up and offered me friendship and introductions that I could have never, ever imagined. And so integrating into the world while still having dreams that were thwarted by the restrictions of the probation system and having to report and being in school and working 4 jobs. And, it was a lot. It was a lot.
And take us to the exact moment it became real to you. Where were you? What triggered it? Who did you talk to? And what did you next? What did you do next?
Okay, so it all became real, the dream.
Yes.
I think the day that I graduated coaching school was the first, like, oh my God, I did it. Like, oh my God. But then it was like, now what? So, it's like, so, You could see behind me, I have a certification like, okay, now what? And while I was in prison, my job, everyone in prison, it's sort of like you're a slave on a plantation. You keep the place running, okay? And that may sound like a very racist thing to say, but it's true. Past age or race or socioeconomic background, the US prison system does not run unless the residents of it run it and work it. And so at first I was in construction. They figured, oh, big real estate mogul, we'll put her in construction. Which luckily I drove a truck. I learned how to tile a bathroom. It was okay. And I got off campus every day. But then the steel-toed boots that they make you wear. Prisons weren't built for women. I'll just leave it at that because I could go on forever about the indignity. However, they make you wear army boots. It's army uniforms, green khaki, and steel-toed boots. And my little bones, I guess, couldn't handle the steel-toed boots, and it busted my ankle. And so then I couldn't do my job in construction, and they decided to make me a GED teacher. And it was
Ooh.
then in that classroom that I saw the common denominators among past age, race, socioeconomic background, religion that had led all these women to this classroom. And so I developed modalities because most of them were like, what do you think you're going to teach me? You're just one of our inmates, And it was like, I don't know anything about you and I've never taught you, but we're going to find out what makes your heart sing. And for whatever reason, you were pregnant and kicked out of your house, or, you had to go to work to feed your family at 13 and you never got to high school. We're going to get you your ticket to the next stage of your life. And we're all going to, 62 of you are going to get this diploma. I don't know how and I don't know when, but we're going to do this. And I started creating a curriculum. Called Your Right to Heal, which was all about journaling. I was a yogi, so I made everybody come at 6 a.m. and do yoga and meditation. Um, Believe it or not, 61 of those 62 women graduated. So I took those modalities and my new coaching certification and I created a curriculum. And when you ask me, when did it become real? Put your seatbelts on, everybody, because now the universe created another miracle. I'm still working odd jobs. I'm coaching people, because to continue having your certified hours, you need hundreds of coaching hours. Okay. And one of my clients calls and says, Ivy, my best friend from college won the Tennessee Powerball and he needs a tax deduction. So if you know of a nonprofit that would like to maybe have funds for you to do your program that you've been dreaming of, fusing arts based and, mind, body, spirit stuff with your coaching, he might want to use some of his lottery winnings. I was like, what? What? Because every nonprofit that I had gone to try to work for as a coach and had said, we can't afford you, show us the money. So I went to the only one in New York that dealt with women because I felt that there were a lot of programs for men, how to write a resume, how to dress for success, how to, so many things for men, nothing, zero for women. And women were the fastest growing segment of the incarcerated population. So I went to an organization in New York, the only one that really focused on women, and they had turned me down prior. And they said, I said, what if I could bring a $500,000 or $1 million and really we could beta test this program? And they said, oh, come on, Ivy, you've been trying to get in here for a year and we just don't have the money and stop dreaming. Go get yourself a job somewhere. So I went back to the client with the friend, the lottery winner, and got the name of his lawyer. I called them back and I said, look, here's the name of the lawyer. This is for real. I'd like to come over and really talk about this. And they went, what do you mean a lawyer? Like this, what's this guy's name? Anyway, that afternoon, after turning me down for a year, all of a sudden it was like, can you come over now? To make a long story short, I had to put it through probation. I had to get it all approved, and I did. And for 1 year, I executed this program, and 100 women in 2 homeless shelters that they ran here in New York City found their worth. Many went back to school. Many got jobs they never would have imagined. Many got kids out of foster care, and almost all of them got permanent housing and moved on in their life. And at the first meeting, budget meeting, to talk about our successes and what we would do in year 2, they fired me. And in New York, you're an at-will hire and you're an at-will fire. They made no excuses. They kept the $600,000 remaining and kicked one of their own to the curb. I'm going to be honest, and I know this sounds disgusting, but as I was escorted out, I threw up on the street in the East Village, because now this meant that I had to call probation. Again, that fear. Oh my God, they're going to send me back. Okay. Even though they had released me early, and it's a fear that you live with. And in that moment, I had to make that decision to call my officer, and he went, Wolf Turk, be here tomorrow morning, 8:00. And I figured this is it. Like, I called my kids. I was hysterical. How could they do this to me? I didn't know, what I would do now. And I went to that office 8:00 the following morning, and he was sitting there with his arms crossed, and he went, Wolf Turk, how you doing? Not so good. And he said, well, we're cutting you loose. Many of the women that you served over the last year came through us before they went into the shelter. You've done a remarkable job, and we want you to go out and take it on the road. And I sat there, quite frankly, paralyzed, because how could I do that? Where would I get the women? Where would I have the money to rent a place? How would I, get my intellectual property? How would I do it? And he looked at me and he said, you don't look very happy. And I said, I'm scared. He said, I trust you. Go out, speak to your friends, speak to your children. Just go, good luck, and have a good life as your best revenge. Well, that 2 days later, I was due to speak in my first public appearance for the New York Women's Forum. And I called the moderator and said, sorry, I can't even breathe. I can't do this. And she said, Ivy, there are 100 women that have paid and signed up to this talk called This Could Have Been You. They are women at the top of their careers, like you were, and they need to hear your story. The show must go on. There's a waiting list of 50 women. You cannot not show up. And so that night, ladies and gentlemen, I found out a couple of things. I shakily told my story for the first time. I found out that A, you never know who's in your audience. B, I wasn't a bad untrained speaker at the time. I've now had training, but then I was a rookie. And that I really had come into something in regard to what, different from men, leads women to criminal legal involvement. And so in the audience that night, at the question and answer time, a woman stood up, and the moderator said, last question, Loretta. And she said, hello, my name is Judge Loretta Preska. And I thought, my God, I put my arms out, put the handcuffs on. I thought the marshals were coming out of the closet. Again, that fear, because she was the Chief Justice of the Southern District of New York, the boss of my sentencing judge. And I sort of got woozy. And the next thing I remember, she said, young lady, I commend your courage. I'm really interested in these pathways you talk about around women, and I want to help you. And every woman in that audience stood up and said, and so do I. And that night, 16 of them took me for dinner. I think it was 16. It might have been 12. One became my lawyer. One did my logo. I was liberated. Project Liberation was born. And that was 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Almost 1,000 women have gone through our program. COVID thwarted it a bit, and I did it for free for a very long time. The New York City Department of Health had funded us, plus private donors. And then I realized it shouldn't take cement walls and bars for women or men to find their worth. And so 2 years ago, I founded A Liberated Life for people who are, you know, first of all, struggling in the crazy world we're living in right now, but taking care of everything and everybody else, sometimes at the expense of themselves, and really wondering, no matter what stage of life they're at, how do I get from where I am to what's next? And being that funding was so sparse for the people who could afford to invest in themselves, I took 15% of the money that they invested in themselves and me and the group and the individual coaching, and I donated it and am continuing to do so. Oh, sorry about that. My dog is barking. To a woman who was marginalized and couldn't afford my services. Asia, come here. Come here. Sorry about that.
Sure. My last question is so if you had to name the decision rule that you use, what would you call it?
I would say the decision rules are under the umbrella of living a liberated life. And what that includes is knowing that more is possible than you could ever imagine, holding adversity as an opportunity and great curriculum for growth. And instead of living life thinking, if I have this and I do that, then I'll be happy, be safe, be rich. It's in reverse. Be who you are, do what you love, and trust you will have everything you need. Be, do, have versus have, do, be. That is my story.
Perfect. Okay. New York questions. A local spot that deserves more attention.
There is a new restaurant. Actually, it's almost a year old. The name of it is Kabawa. It
Mm-hmm.
is won many awards recently. It is founded by Paul Carmichael, a remarkable chef. He has brought Caribbean cuisine to New York in a way that is magnificent. There is Bar Kabawa, where you can go and have wonderful drinks and light bites. And then there's the restaurant next door, which is a price fixed menu. And you leave there feeling satiated, loved, and happy.
Awesome. Go to restaurant for a big celebration.
For a big celebration, this is a restaurant I haven't been to in a very long time, but the name of it is Parkside. And when my grandmother was alive, every year she wanted to go there for her birthday. It's an old fashioned, like Italian kind of mafia kind of restaurant in Queens.
Mhm.
And it's amazing.
What subway behavior should be illegal?
Attacking people. I mean, I think that's already illegal. Think urinating in the subway. I mean, also illegal, but anything that is harming a fellow traveler.
Got it. Hey, shout out to our new mayor. We got a request. Make the subway safer. Next question: if New York had a smell, how would you describe it?
Oh boy, if it had a smell. I think chestnuts roasting on an open fire, like there aren't that many street vendors left that roast chestnuts and sell
Sure.
pretzels, but that is to me the smell of New York.
Awesome. What neighborhood is your personality and why?
I would say the West Village is my personality. It's funky, it's elegant, it's creative, it's a little laid back and very avant-garde at the same time, and it has delicious restaurants.
But my favorite restaurant there is Assault and Battery. Have
Ah,
you been? It's
I know it.
English fish and chips. I love it. I love it. Okay. Last question. Complete the sentence. In New York, you can blank.
In New York, you can be who you are, do what you love, and have anything and everything you. I genuinely, soulfully, in every which way, inside out and backwards, get in sharing adversities. And believe me, prison wasn't the only one. Okay. There have been many in my life that, from cancer to divorce to, death of loved ones. I mean, to be able to be authentic and not live in fear of judgment. And my why is to inspire others to really be who they are and trust that that will call in, the people, places, and things that are for them, not against them. That's my why is to inspire.
And we are now at the end of our program. Wanted to say to our live audience, thank you for being here and a witness to one of the best possible episodes in the history of my podcast, and possibly the best video of Ivy in the whole internet. So thank you very much for participating. I got so excited. So we end the show. I will give the floor to Miss Ivy for like final statements, and we'll sunset from there.
I really want to thank you for having me. I think, again, as I spoke of earlier, in a way, it was a divine intervention. I was thinking about actually the last question from Carlo about my why. I happened to listen to Simon Sinek his book recently, on the why. And I realized that, for a lot of the last 12 years, a lot of what I did was speaking engagements, and that while I was developing a liberated life and doing workshops and individual coaching the last year, I kind of stopped going out to speak. And so I think it's amazing that JG and I kind of intersected, because it wasn't like I went to a speakers bureau like in the old days, or I joined a Facebook group, or I just was sitting here really imagining what I love to do, which is to inspire. And somehow he popped up. I don't even really look at Facebook much. I'm not a big social media lady. So how we even connected, and then how we even turned out to be neighbors and live a block from one another. I mean, I eat in the restaurant in his building like once a month. Like, the whole thing is crazy. And it's just a testament to living a liberated life, really trusting that when you tune in, when you pause and you tune in and you follow something that is making you feel inspired or excited without knowing the outcome, and you're trusting the process. If you are trusting the process, maybe what doesn't look like it's working is the greatest thing that ever happened. Like, I wanted a new group and it hasn't happened yet. I would love to get a new group going of a liberated life. I would love to have and inspire, more private clients. But for right now, I'm here today and I'm speaking, and maybe that'll bring them. You think you're on a path and that you should and have to do certain things. Well, I say, if should and have to are in your vocabulary, transform it into I want to. Because when it's I really genuinely want to, the universe provides. That's it.
If you're serious about making better decisions in your life, career, or business, subscribe to the Powerhouse. Every episode, we unpack one real decision under pressure so you can learn from leaders across New York City. And if there's someone whose story we should feature next, drop their name in the comments. I'm JG, and I'll see you in the next episode.